The candle stub flickered, casting long, erratic shadows against the damp cellar walls. Eli sat in the corner, his back pressed against the cold stone. He traced the worn edges of a heavy leather-bound volume, his eyes darting across the faded ink. This was the third book he had managed to pull from the archives today. Outside, the rhythm of the city changed. Heavy boots struck the cobblestones, the sound vibrating through the floorboards and rattling the candle holder. Eli froze. He pressed his palm against the pages, holding his breath until the rhythmic thudding of the patrol moved past the cellar entrance and faded into the distance. The silence returned, heavy and suffocating. He exhaled slowly, his focus snapping back to the forbidden text. The diagrams detailed ancient clockwork mechanics, knowledge strictly prohibited by the ruling council. He ignored the damp air and the grime beneath his fingernails. He turned the page, the dry parchment rasping in the quiet room. He leaned closer to the dying light, his mind mapping the complex schematics with absolute precision. Eli reached into his pocket and withdrew a single, jagged gear. He set it on the small wooden table, the metal dull and pitted with age. Beside it, the open manual displayed a complex diagram of interlocking teeth. He picked up a pair of rusted tweezers, his grip firm despite the tremor in his hands. He aligned the gear with the central housing of his device, but the fit was imperfect. The teeth ground against one another with a harsh, grating sound. He pulled back, wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, and examined the alignment again. He adjusted the angle by a fraction of a millimeter, his movements slow and deliberate. The tension in the room seemed to concentrate on the tip of the tweezers. He pushed the gear forward once more. Resistance held for a heartbeat, then gave way. A soft, clean click resonated through the quiet cellar. The gear spun freely, locked perfectly into the assembly. Eli leaned back, his breath steadying as the small metal teeth caught and held. He watched the rotation, the movement smooth and silent. A faint smile touched his lips. He had solved the first piece of the puzzle. Eli turned to the second volume, a heavy tome filled with dense, shifting ciphers. He cleared a space on the stone floor, grabbed a piece of charcoal, and began mapping patterns. His hands were stained black, the soot smearing across his skin as he worked. He scribbled a sequence, paused, and wiped it away with his palm. He corrected the symbol, his movements growing frantic. As the logic began to align, he started a new line, the charcoal scratching harshly against the grit of the floor. He was deep into the translation, his mind locked on the hidden meaning of the text. When the sound hit, a heavy, rhythmic pounding struck the cellar door. The wood groaned under the impact. Eli froze, the charcoal snapping in his grip. The sound echoed through the small space, vibrating against the walls and shaking the candle flame. He did not move. He stared at the door, his heart hammering against his ribs. The silence that followed the knock was worse than the noise itself. He held his breath, listening for the sound of the latch turning. His eyes locked on the heavy timber barrier. The air in the cellar turned cold. Eli scrambled backward, his hands moving with desperate precision. He shoved the leather-bound volumes into the hollow space beneath the loose floorboards. He slammed the wood back into place and kicked a pile of discarded rags over the seam. He snatched up a broom, his knuckles white against the handle, and began sweeping the dust in long, erratic strokes. The cellar door creaked open, the rusted hinges whining in the stagnant air. A guard stepped into the threshold, his silhouette blocking the dim light. He peered into the shadows, his gaze sweeping over the stone walls and the scattered charcoal marks on the floor. Eli kept his head bowed, the bristles of the broom scraping rhythmically against the grit. He did not look up. The god stood motionless for several seconds, the heavy weight of his presence pressing into the small room. He grunted, a low, dismissive sound. He turned on his heel, his boots clicking sharply against the stone steps as he retreated. Eli did not stop sweeping until the heavy thud of the door. Eli waited. He counted the rhythmic thud of retreating boots until the silence returned to the cellar. He dropped the broom, the handle clattering against the stone floor. He crawled to the corner, pulled away the pile of rags, and pried up the loose floorboard. He dragged the books back into the dim candlelight, their covers dusted with grit. He did not check the door again. He did not pause to catch his breath. He flipped the clockwork manual to the final chapter, the parchment stiff and brittle under his fingertips. His eyes locked onto the diagrams, tracing the intricate lines of the forbidden mechanism. He had 3 hours until dawn. He leaned into the light, his mind mapping every secret, every gear, every hidden connection. The danger remained, but the knowledge was closer now. He began to read, his focus absolute.